Welcome to Trustworthy AI Chronicles, where we explore the cutting edge of AI security, ethics, and innovation. My name is Dr. Ihsen Alouani from the Center for Secure Information Technologies at Queen's University Belfast. Join me to uncover the risks, share the breakthroughs, and spotlight the people shaping the future of trustworthy AI.
20 years defending against cyber threats, chair of Northern Ireland cybersecurity cluster and founder of Vertical Structure. Simon Whittaker has seen companies crumble from a single compromised file. He's testified on Sky News during major breaches and mentored the next generation of cyber defenders. Today, he's here to cut through the noise and tell us what really matters in the intersection between AI and cybersecurity. Thank you very much, Simon, for joining me today in this episode of Trustworthy AI Chronicles. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here, and I feel very privileged to be part of this this podcast. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So to start with, Simon, can you walk us through your background?
Sure, no problem at all. So I've been working in cybersecurity for many years now, since before it was really called security. So originally I had a very different background. I actually went to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts and studied stage management and theatre production. Came over to Northern Ireland for a job. I met a girl pretty quickly after that, and very shortly after that, kind of realized that I didn't enjoy working in the theatre, that it was too much. It was a very different kind of organization to that I wanted to be part of. So I broke into tech. I did lots of OU, distance learning courses, that sort of thing, and ended up working for a tech company here in Belfast. And we worked a lot with oil and gas companies. Oil and gas companies. A lot of money, a lot of software, a lot of fun things going on. It was really good crack. But at one point they did a joint venture with a Russian oil and gas company. And the first question that the Russians asked us when they bought our software was, have you ever had a security or penetration test? And I said, no, but don't worry, we're really good at this stuff. It won't be a problem at all. It's not going to be an issue. About 20 seconds into the pen test, I knew we were in a world of trouble. And after about 20 minutes, they stopped the test because they had broken so much stuff that it wasn't possible to carry out. But for me, that was a light bulb moment. I was like, that's class. Security. How did they break that stuff remotely? They weren't even sitting in the room with us. They weren't sitting there looking at things. All they were doing was accessing the site. The things that we had opened up to them, they were accessing that and able to break absolutely everything from that remote standpoint. And it was brilliant and terrifying and wonderful and excruciating all at the same time. So we went to fix the software, and I thought, right, that's something I want to get into. Another career change moment, light bulb, like that's what I want to do. So started working with a friend of mine from the same company in about 2010. Messed around for a year or two, having a bit of crack, just learning our trade a little bit, and then start pushing on really from 2013. We started our company. We did security and penetration testing. That's vertical structure. That's vertical structure. Yes. So we did security and penetration testing, security training, so teaching people how to break things, and then security consulting, so helping people be better. So we've been part of information cybersecurity since that standpoint. We've seen it grow up from being, a few kids breaking stuff through to nation states breaking stuff, back through to a few kids breaking stuff, and now we're onto a few kids employed by nation states breaking stuff, and it's all just coming together. And we're really seeing that joining together as well of security and AI. And one of my thoughts around it is that actually it's still very similar stuff. Still, we're talking about data. We're talking about protecting data. We're talking about looking at what we're giving people, robots, things access to, and we're trying to protect that. And that's what we've always been about. That's what security has always been about. Now we have very clever adversaries, we've got very clever defenders, we've got very clever robots who are doing their own thought processes and things like that. So it's been a wonderful journey so far, and I'm very, very excited to see what comes next in this journey as well.
That's exciting and inspiring, I suppose. People who start from a background that is so far away from cybersecurity and landing there is really an inspiration.
Well, and that's vital. That is absolutely vital. This world of cybersecurity that I've been involved with, it needs different people from different backgrounds. We cannot just do the same normal boring stuff that we've had for the last few years. We've got to have interesting people from different areas. It's why I'm so keen on cyber first. It's why I'm getting people from different areas in. It's why, in my organization in vertical structure, before we were acquired by Instil, and we had a fellow who was a firefighter for 22 years. He was awesome. No pressure. Nothing was too much hassle. Nothing was too stressful. Nothing was too complicated. He is brilliant at what he does. And he's just calm and clear. When you've cut children out of a burning car, I suppose a cyber incident doesn't mean it's not going to be as much the stress thing. So, but we need those people. We need people who have. I know this fantastic person I had privilege of working with sometimes called Lara, and she used to be a park ranger in Crawfordspurn Country Park, and she now works in cyber. So cool! It's just brilliant. That's what we should be encouraging.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Uh, so diving straight away, you mentioned the data part.
Yeah.
And in one of the conversations, I think if I don't, yeah, it is with someone from NVIDIA and saying cybersecurity now is a data problem. Uh, the use of AI in cybersecurity as of starting from probably a few years ago, it was probably limited to some sort of basic machine learning stuff, trying to catch patterns and detecting intrusions or potentially recognizing malware, all together with a static analysis and dynamic analysis and so on. While now I think it is getting to a different level with generative AI, where it's definitely very useful from defensive perspective, but it is also a fuel to a higher, much higher, disruptively higher scale of what could be done from the attacker's perspective. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I described it. I wrote a few notes down, obviously, about this, but I describe it as exciting, terrifying, and essential. So, from an exciting perspective, you've already mentioned they're looking for patterns. Humans are actually pretty rubbish in some ways at looking at those patterns, especially with massive amounts of data. Yeah, we'll see that, something on the wall is 2 millimeters out, and I have some friends who, one of my buddies is a designer, and I've actually seen him say to somebody that is 1 pixel out. And then he'll go and get his ruler and he'll show them that he was right. And Dave's just so precise. It's wonderful. Um, but
He's an outlier.
but what we've got with this ability with Magic Robots, with the AI world, is around their ability to be able to sift and get through huge amounts of data. So what used to take, for instance, a SOC hours and hours to go through, you're looking through, and then it goes from a level 1 to a level 2 and back down to a level 1, and then there's another alert and it goes back to level 2. What used to happen, that could now happen in kind of minutes. And so we can see those patterns, and we can see who's attacking, we can see what's going on. Now the kind of opposite side of that is that the attackers also have this. So they get some very similar sorts of tools or stuff they've written themselves, or in this game of whack-a-mole that cybersecurity is. Sometimes they have the better stuff, and we're just catching up. And then you see something and you hit it, and you kind of come around. And AI and some of the tools that are out there, it lowers the skills barrier. So instead of it being a case that we always used to phishing emails from instance, we always used to say check for bad grammar, check for bad spelling. You're on the other side. You're saying on the way. Well, it's now we're saying check for too good grammar, check for too fraud, because no one can write that perfectly. You're doing the same checks as you do when you're looking for AI generated LinkedIn post or whatever. When you're looking for the whatever that and that is that old or all of those things that we're kind of looking for. So you don't need to be a skilled hacker, a skilled programmer, a skilled social engineer in some cases, even to produce convincing phishing, malware, or deepfake content. And so, you're not seeing necessarily that ability to that barrier to getting into cybercrime, which is kind of worrying and kind of interesting from a youth perspective as well, because we've always had a problem with young people getting involved in cybercrime, and now some of these tools allow them in a much more rapid way. So, a lot of what the work we do is Cyber First, channeling people into the right place, and say, when you, instead of, I don't know, hacking that bank or whatever it is that they're up to, play around with this. And then you get a job working for them, their class, and you get to do this stuff. And you get to go and work in the government and do fun stuff there. And then you get to out into industry and you make a load of money. So follow that path instead of getting arrested at 18 and not being able to do anything. And we've also got to think about scale for this as well. So the scale of these threats that we've got is too big for humans alone. We need machine speed defense. So we need to make sure that we've got, we've got a response in the same time and time frame as the attackers are now attacking us. We've got to think about the fact that some of these attacks are nation state. So, it's not just people playing around at home. That sometimes there are these larger organizations and kind of nation state attackers who are able to use literally supercomputers to do fun things. But we need that machine speed defense, and we've got to build that responsibly. We've got to make sure that we're being responsible about how we do things. So we think about the fact that AI gives our defenders superpowers because it gives us the ability to read and react to things very, very rapidly. But it gives the attackers them too. So we can't just deploy it recklessly. We've got to understand what's happening, and we've got to make sure that we are staying ahead of the game. And that's something in Northern Ireland that we're really trying to do. Joining together AI and cybersecurity, for instance. We're here a part of CSIT. CSIT always been ahead of the game. AI Cyber Hub, all the fun bits and pieces that go along with that. I know working with David Crozier, AICC and things like that, where where there are these fantastic things taking place. I saw this morning there was an all-party parliamentary group set up in Stormont, which was launched last night. Things like that. We are staying ahead of the game. We're staying relevant, and we've got to make sure that we continue to do so.
Yeah, all party group meeting. I was there. I was invited by Kate Trelligill Fergus. She was my previous guest here. Fantastic. So takeaway is this lower bar of access and also scale. I think those are the key ideas here. There is the use. So I think it has always been an imbalance, asymmetry between the attacker and the defender. The defender needs to defend against every single possible vulnerability, while the attacker needs one. Only one is enough.
There's no doubt, though, that if you defend everything, you defend nothing.
Yeah.
So what do we do? I mean, and that's one of the things that we always talk about, and I always talk about with our clients, which is talking about that risk. So identify what are the key things. So in your world, for instance, a research paper about the incredible 5 years worth of research that has been taking place. It's probably hugely valuable, much more so than the CV that I sent you before we started doing this stuff. Do you know what I mean? So protect your stuff accordingly, protect your data accordingly, and think about what is there. And also being aware that AI can ingest all of that. The LLMs will ingest both of those things and do some marvelous things with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So one point is using AI is bumping, and also the vulnerabilities of AI or the security of AI is another thing. In a recent research, for example, we took state-of-the-art security copilot.
Yeah.
And we were able to make it totally blind on some specific intrusion that we injected in the log. So this kind of cat and mouse game that is ongoing. I think why I'm mentioning this, just probably for people to know that AI is not magic.
Yeah,
it's new, but it also has a new surface of vulnerabilities as well.
Yeah, and one of the things I think about as well is it was actually one of your professors, Sandra Scott Howard, who I heard say this, and I don't know if they took it from somewhere else or whatever, but I always claim it as hers, so that's what I'll do. But they said that we didn't stop teaching maths when we invented the calculator. So let's not stop teaching critical thinking and kind of this ability to ask questions because we've created a pseudo magic thinking robot. And let's think about that.
Absolutely.
So we'll credit Sandra with that. Okay, she gets that name.
I think AI, as we mentioned, the speed of development that is happening. Only a few years ago, people don't necessarily even talk about AI. And generally, when we talk, there was even a debate, should we call this AI because we are talking about machine learning more specifically than AI. I think AI now came a lot with the generative AI piece, uh, specifically large language models.
Yeah.
Now, based on large language models, there is this new concept of agentic AI, where it is not just prompting a model and receiving response. Now there is an agent that is powered by a language model being capable of interacting, receiving information, but also making actions and calling APIs and using other tools and orchestrating the whole bit of IT ecosystem. When organizations, I think the opportunity from this is obvious, right? The opportunities are amazing. But at the same time, rushing to deploy AI agents, especially in order to have higher utility, they need to get access to data and so on.
Yeah.
What are the specific risks that are uh, inherently related to just going ahead and deploying AI agents in systems?
Firstly, AI, the agentic AI side of things is fascinating. I love it. I love the idea of it. I like the way it looks when the magic robot, that we'll call it from now on, is solving problems on the screen, and I just think that's so clever here. It's so clever. There's there's decades, hundreds of years of human interaction built into that model that's doing it. But it is something that is also terrifying to me. We spoke earlier about, essential and, and terrifying and all those things, and particularly with the agentic stuff. But it is class. I mean, I recently, I was playing around in the National Cybersecurity Centre, the NCSC, provide free online training for staff members, for anyone to use free of charge. So there's a quiz at the end and all of that sort of stuff. And I put Atlas, the OpenAI browser, I put that through the NCSC security training. Passed, got 100%, did really well. It did my training for me. It was fascinating. I'm not 100% sure if it was learning from what I sent it or whether it was learning from previous knowledge or whatever, but it did it and clicked through, and it looked like a human was doing it, and it was, I mean, you could see all the processes that was going on. So it was fantastic to have a look at. It does also scare me that if I say, for instance, I want to book a holiday to Australia, and I get one of the parameters slightly wrong, and I end up staying, flying the wrong way around the world, staying in New York for 6 months while I, wait for my transfer flight, or, that sort of thing. And that's just usability stuff. Yeah. From a security perspective, I mean, one of the things I was thinking about this was, it's like giving an AI agent full system access is like hiring a brilliant intern and giving them the keys to your whole building and bank account on day one. And that's not something you do. That's not something you do. You would give them an induction, and you'd say, these are the limits. Here are the guardrails. Here are the things that we're going to put in place. You'd think about least privilege first. So you'd think about, as we have always done in cybersecurity in the world in which I work, we always think about that principle of least privilege. So you make sure you give them as little access as they need. You don't give them write access unless absolutely required. You maybe give them read access, but only to the relevant stuff. So, if you're using the agentic tool to, as say, book flights or book a trip or something like that, you maybe wouldn't give it access to make the payment or to confirm. It would give you the options which you then are able to provide. When it's doing car insurance, it is. Do you really trust that it's going to be 100% accurate? Kind of go into 30,000 different organizations or 3,000 different organizations and get them, all the data back, or are you going to end up with with bike insurance as opposed to car insurance, and you're not going to realize it till you have a car accident. That, and it's things like that. So least privilege first. Guardrails matter more than intelligence. These are your stop points. These are the things you do not do. I was actually chatting with on an interview for our podcast at Vertical Structure. I was chatting to one of the chaps who is involved with the parliamentary group in the House of Lords about AI regulation. And one of the things he was talking about was how he wanted to set up guardrails to protect innovation. Because at the moment, without regulation, we know regulations coming in, but without regulation, companies can almost be scared of where the limits are going to be. And therefore, they don't push those limits and they don't kind of jump to you. They stay firmly within the center ground. Whereas if you set the limits, then firms will look at it and go, yeah, I can get that. That's good. That's within grams. That's good. So, and I really like that attitude. And I feel it's a similar sort of thing to this. The other thing I think about, and it still goes back to the same stuff that we've all been talking about for many years, is around threat modeling. So threat modeling is a key tool and a key requirement for absolutely every part of software development, including AI work, including everything that we do. The question should be, what's the worst thing this agent could do if it went wrong? If the answer is it could, I don't know, delete all of our HR records, or it could pay everybody the wrong amount of money, or it could, in the case of health, for instance, it could prescribe the wrong medication. That's what we call in our business a bad thing. That's the issue. And also, if you don't know the answer, then it shouldn't be deployed. So if you don't realize what's going on, the threat modeling for me always comes back to some stuff that Adam Shurstaff wrote many, many years ago about threat modeling. He has 4 questions. I'm going to have to read them out because they're just to make sure I get them absolutely right. What are we making? What are we building? What can go wrong? What are we going to do about it? And then, did we do a good job? 4 questions. Ask that about absolutely everything you're building, and you will find yourself in a much better position when you're done. We taught threat modeling for many years, and the process is the key part. You always get people saying, "Oh, I bought a threat modeling tool, or paid for this, I paid for that." Well, just piece of A3 paper and some post-it notes, and work out what could go wrong. And that's the question that needs to be asked about the agentic AI world. What is the worst thing that could happen if the agent went rogue? I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, thank you very much. The threat modeling, this keeps coming in our PhD students' panels.
Yeah.
And they start away talking about these defenses or attacks or whatever there, and they don't mention the threat model.
Yeah.
So I cannot evaluate how good or bad is this unless you tell me who you are, what's the limits, who is your adversary, what do you think could be the worst case, and then I can understand your defense is actually good. I think that's the same methodological point of
Absolutely.
what could go wrong in the worst case under my assumptions.
Absolutely. And you won't always get it right. And that's okay too. But I mean, we always, I always go from the principle that you should do something and then do it better next time. So it might be a small process this time, but do something. Have an understanding. Write down somewhere, if this agent goes rogue, there are 2 small things that could go wrong. Write it down, share it with your team, and go, okay, next time we do this, when we add another layer to this agent, when it goes off and looks for APIs to do other things, then we can add that. We can add that to the mix, and then you're going from a point of strength as opposed to a point of weakness. So, I think that's really important to do as well.
Absolutely. I think that this attitude is better than the proof of concept paralysis, where we have something that's just everyone is scared to do anything.
Yeah, and again, do something and do it better next time.
Absolutely. So moving on a little bit away from the technical stuff towards more higher level governance and trust and soft concepts, things like public trust.
Yeah.
I think this is a fragile, latent, probably more of feeling more than understanding, because those are very complex things. We are even people who are experts are struggling with things, to be on top of things, let alone the general public. But at the same time, there is the need for thinking trustworthiness, or thinking, say, at least from our perspective, security, as in the design, building, deployment, use, not repeating the same security errors again and again. We build things and then we think after as an afterthought, we consider cybersecurity or security in general.
Yeah, so security has always been, ever since I started in this world, it's something that people come to you and they say, "We're going live tomorrow. Can we get a quick pen test before we go live?" You're like, "No." And that's how it works. And I don't think that's a good idea because we will find stuff. Our team are good. They'll break your stuff and it'll just go away. Um, but I think that when it comes down to things like public trust and do we trust the stuff that's happening, um, I think that there are some complications around that because I don't know if you've ever, for instance, messed around with OpenAI stuff or Claude or any of those fun bits and pieces. I saw some fantastic bad images that ChatGPT had created. I think it was after some salmon swimming in a river, and the salmon was all smoked. And so it was all like fillets of salmon and things like that. Or there's silly examples like that. There was one which I think it was it was playing on the fact that ChatGPT couldn't work out how an umbrella stayed up. So it couldn't get it, and so the umbrella was being held in two hands or in one hand, or it was attached to the hand, or it was, and it just couldn't work. So everything's getting a lot cleverer, but also we do need humans in the loop as well. So, one of the things I think that is so important is that we've got to make sure that we've got the right humans in the loop that enable us to use the right technology. As with all these things, you can spend millions of pounds on technology and it still be rubbish. That's just how things go. So I would definitely be encouraging people to consider what technology they're going to use, why they're going to use that technology. Does it actually make things better or does it make things worse? Think about who other people's AI, for instance, as well. So public trust in public services, for instance. If we're going to if we're going to think about that, we've got to think about who controls that data. Where does that data end up? If we're going to, we heard a wee while back about one of the large tech companies. I can't remember which one it was now, so I'd say it, but it was one of the large tech companies wanted to swallow up all the health data for the UK, so that then they could make decisions or they could do some work on it. We've got to make sure that we are not just giving our information away to third parties just for the crack of it. Keeping clear data sovereignty rules, making sure we got transparent supply chains. So where are we? What are we expecting from our suppliers? I've seen some work from the FCA around this. That the FCA are doing the Financial Conduct Authority are doing some really interesting work around the use of AI and how they expect transparency. We saw the thing from was it JP Morgan last year, or earlier this year? Feels like a long time now. World moves fast in this world, doesn't it? Where they talk about if you are using AI or LLMs within our systems, we need to know what they are and where the model has been trained and how it's been trained, because we're going to ask you those questions, and that's what you've got to. That's what you've got to do. So we've got to be thinking about these things all the time. Also, I think that there is some interesting stuff that we've got to recognize that these large language models, they suck in all the data that they can get access to. So we've got to think about recognize that harm it can come from data, behavior, or training issues, not just from code issues. So when we're testing this, it's not just does it work, it's does it work, and also has it done anything to screw up the rest of the model over in the corner. I was likening AI and LLMs in general in some ways to, the thing in Harry Potter, I'm not sure if you've seen Harry Potter, but the pensieve, the thing where you take a thought out, you pop it into the thing which you can't remove a thought from your brain. So how do you, say for instance, you put some data that's incorrect into a model, how do you then retrain that model without access, without that one piece in there? Because it's not a row in a database. No, it's not. That's not what it is. It's almost like a neuron linked to this, which is linked to that, which is linked to the other, and therefore a decision has been made because of those four things in total. If you then remove that one thing, then the decision it made here is then going to be different, which will affect the decision. It goes on in a chain. So we have to be very careful what we're putting in there, because if you're not, then it'll be complicated on the way out.
This is fundamental in the sense of there is a whole line of research on machine unlearning.
Unlearning, I like that. Yeah.
But and even say, if you think of it even from a regulation perspective, GDPR, you have the right to be for hustling. We know how to do that, enforce that in classical databases. As you mentioned, this is an entry in a table, just delete that and you're fine. And you're compliant, and I'm happy my data has been deleted. For machine learning models, my data, if it has been used to train a model, it is somewhere, but deleting my data, and if I ask a provider to retrain the whole model on the dataset without my data, they're not going to be happy with it. It's probably even impossible.
It is impossible, exactly. So, you asked Meta to remove your particular details from, the big LLM that's created, or we saw LinkedIn recently have started, enforcing your data going to your LLMs to train the model without and it's the default now as opposed to the non-default. What do they do? I'm sure they have ways, and I'm sure they thought about this because they're very clever people. But I still have concerns about whether that is something that one can do, because it isn't a piece of data. It's a decision made from a piece of data that impacts other decisions, that impacts another decision. So I don't know what the answer.
Yeah, that's. I don't think anyone knows, because even so, we're thinking about the impact of a specific sample on the, as you mentioned, the behavior of the model. If we push it a little bit further, the concept of memorization, and that's probably even more interesting from a privacy perspective, because now your data has been used to train the model to make it more, say, useful, but the model can regurgitate verbatim your data.
Yeah.
And the distance between that happening is just the capacity of some attacker to find a way to make it regurgitate.
Yeah.
So, and that's a part of kind of proactive thinking in those models, is considering the fact that in the worst case, as you mentioned, someone could probably prompt the right way the model such that it regurgitates my data.
And we've played around with this as researchers, and I'm sure and Quees, you've been in CC, you've been doing something similar. But if you ask, for instance, let's say ChatGPT to create a phishing email to convince you to click on a link, it'll say, no, that's unethical. I couldn't possibly do that. But then if you ask it to create a marketing email to invite somebody to watch this podcast of these two people sitting chatting, it will happily create that. And you just twist it around a wee tiny bit, and that's a professionally trained, one of the biggest in the world, and that's a one with better ethics than not. We at NI Cyber, we were privileged enough to have a chap called Sean Gilmore come down and have a chat with us about some of the work that he's been doing, and Sean's been doing some work around an AI with zero morals. So him and his team, our regulatory, have been investigating what would happen if one of these models turned nasty. And it is fascinating to see. It's basically you provide it with the information where it says the goal is to break into this company and delete all their data, and it works out how to do it. And they've got this model, this sociopath of an AI and associated agents, and Sean's team. That it is incredible to kind of hear what they're up to, and that's in the lab. That's for a bit of fun and kind of not a bit of fun. That's to see what they could be facing. It's it's really interesting. But those things are happening, and this is Sean, who's got ethics and who has morals and is keeping it tight and is keeping it done as research. There's plenty of people out there without any of those ethics or morals floating around, would thoroughly suggest having a chat with someone like him to give some, to get further information about that, because it's scary stuff. It is fascinating but terrifying.
uh, Moving a little bit from the private sector to the public sector and the government, do you have any concerns about the public sector or the government or agencies using AI? To which extent they are even ready to deploy it?
Yes, I think that there is I think there's a real drive to, what's the word, streamline public services at the moment. Um, but sometimes public services should take a while. Some things are really important. Take, for example, a death certificate being issued or a birth certificate being issued. That happens once. There is only one opportunity to do that. That should be a slow process. If someone's able to, there was an attack a while back where someone had access to birth and death certificates systems in another country. I can't remember which one it was, but that meant that you could create a birth certificate for somebody, you could create a death certificate for somebody and ruin their lives. If all the bank needs to close your bank account is a death certificate, that's it, you're done. I want that to take a bit of time. I need that to take a bit of time, because otherwise you're going to get really screwed up really quickly. So
They're always on back to the threat modeling, right? Yeah, this is
what the worst thing that can happen? What are the 4 questions? What are we making? What can go wrong? What are we going to do about it? And did we do a good job? What's the worst thing that could go wrong? Somebody can be dead in the eyes of the state. That's and it goes back to, as if you've seen 1995 Hackers, the best movie in the whole wide world. They do that to the FBI agent in the film. They kill him. They make him deceased, and his wife gets a pension payout or something. Anyways, it's phenomenal. But yes, some things should take some time. There are areas definitely where things could be streamlined without question, and I think that what's important is working out where those areas are. So, for instance, parking fines, or something like that, or working out council tax or something. There are things that we could use to streamline things. Maybe help us to help people in public sector have fewer meetings to get more stuff done, or that sort of thing. But we've got to be considering these things slowly and cautiously, and not just jumping in, because what we can't have is exactly what we've talked about. We can't just be throwing all of our data, every single piece of information that is held by the public sector or by the UK government about us, into a great big LLM and allowing anybody to search it. That would be nerve-wracking for me, because data can't be removed from it. Or maybe it can, but that is those sort of things. So what about also data sovereignty rules? What are we looking at? A lot of these companies are either American, Chinese, that sort of thing. We've got to keep that stuff as locally as we possibly can, and that's really important. And there has to also be that in-house capability for mission critical. If you look at something critical, let's say what's called air traffic control. Air traffic controllers use a lot of computers to get stuff done, and they have all this stuff. It's gone a long way from little planes landing on a map and kind of blocks and that sort of stuff. However, they can still go back to that if they need to. They can still do that. They can still do the basics of landing the most critical aircraft pretty quickly, because they know what they're doing. That's the mission critical. Now imagine that's an AI bot who suddenly has a bad day, or kind of gets trained poorly, or someone's playing flight sim and that data goes in instead of the real instead of real data, or something silly like that. You've got to be thinking again, what's the worst that could happen, and then we've got to work back from that.
You mentioned that as sovereignty. If you generalize to tech sovereignty in general, I don't know what your views on this, but I mean, we need to face the fact that Europe in general, the UK and Europe, are lagging behind in this the globally, geopolitically, if you want. There is technology, geopolitics, and I think the DeepSeek moment was kind of foundational in the sense of absolute potential inflection point that is happening. What are your views on this? To which extent the sovereignty, AI sovereignty or tech sovereignty is important?
I think it is important. I think that we've got to have some control. You've got to have some control over what you're doing, because you you can't necessarily rely that friends will be friends forever, if you see what I mean. And you see that in geopolitical stuff. I'm reading some fantastic books. There's a book, I shouldn't mention it. We'll advertise the rest is declassified. The rest is classified podcast. Apart from this one of the finest podcasts going. But yeah, it's a fantastic set of stories. And in that, the Soviets were the worst enemy. Then the Russians became our friends, and then the Russians became the enemies again. And then this is all cyclical. And for a long time, in the mid 90s, early noughties, actually we started sharing a lot of information with Russia again, and we started having business, and that's why I ended up doing some work there. But now that's completely not possible. So we have to be aware of the fact that these things change. You look at the administration in the United States. I'm not necessarily sure I would want to have every single part of my country's data being run from an administration that is not, I don't want to say stable, but is not on a stable keel. That things change so rapidly, and that's up to them. That's up to them to sort out. But we need to have control over what we do, and we can align with others without question. So in the north here, we should be aligning with the EU. We should be aligning with Ireland. We should be working together to help make this something we can all do together. So we're not just this isolated place. But we've also got to make sure that we're working to try to maintain our own ability to solve these problems.
Brilliant. So let's move on a little bit to the skills part of this, and I think that's one of the sectors, I would say, that is disruptively changed by the AI boom, I would say. Uh, Obviously, you've been involved in cyber first and trying to develop next or help the next generation experts in cybersecurity and so on. Eh, How do you see the impact of AI impacting not only cybersecurity, but also because of that impacting the skills necessary to be useful or to be a professional, successful professional?
So skills have always changed. Skills have changed over the last while. They're um, still people, I presume, who know how to do build a barrel, for instance, or they know how to there are still people who shoe horses and those sort of things. Those people still exist, but in a much smaller way. We have many fewer of them now. We have many more Python developers than we do have, blacksmiths, for instance. But at its time, that would once have been a very highly technical, very, kind of useful field to be in. But we're now at a stage where things are changing again. I think in the world of cyber, things are constantly changing. I mean, this industry changes so rapidly. A few years ago, I was lucky enough to go on holiday to Australia for 3.5 weeks, I think it was, and didn't read any LinkedIn posts or blogs. I didn't read anything at all. And I came back and the whole world changed. So I had to catch up again and work out what was going on. So these things are changing. But one of the things we've got to be aware of is that we have to stay relevant on this. We have to stay understanding about the fact that these things are changing and be agile about how we do it. And so, I think Queens are offering things like micro credentials and things like that now, which is great to see, because these things do change more rapidly than a degree course can deal with sometimes. So thinking about things like that, I think that with Cyber First, there has been this real drive to get industry into education, and I think that is really important because we can tell in education what we need. And that's really good. Cyber First is shortly transitioning into Tech First. which is the new iteration of Cyber First, and it covers cyber, AI, quantum. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be bigger. It's going to be better. It's going to have many, many more kind of things going on. So we will all be learning more about how that all works as well, using the model of Cyber First, which works. I mean, we have people. You have a CSIT PhD who has come through from Cyber First girls competition at school, through the Cyber First bursary, through to working with me and another local organisation, through to now doing a PhD about quantum computing in CSIT. Rose Templeton, fantastic. Just that works. It's proven to work. You can see it, and you see these people who are coming out of it. It is phenomenal. We are trying to influence people earlier as part of these skills things as well. So making sure that we're influencing people as early as we can. People like Victoria Logan from AFLAC, who are running the Cyber First Girls Empower Girls event, which is 500 year 8s, going to the Waterfront on the 19th of March, I think it is this year, sometime around then. I think it's the 19th. And basically what it allows them to do is to see that there is a career in tech for them. Those are the brilliant people that we want to get into this world. So, those skills are changing. We just need to keep up with it and keep on going. I do know there are some opportunities to be able to sponsor that Cyber First Empower Girls event, and it is without question one of the finest kind of opportunities to be able to influence the future of this industry. So I'd thoroughly recommend everyone have a look at it. But what we've also got to be thinking about is that we always need fewer pure specialists. How many people who understand things on a whole higher level, and that's where things like Cyber First and Tech First will come in. So you want to be training people up to understand the intersection between security, AI, ethics, policy, and human behavior. All of those things crossing over together. Those are the sort of people who are going to be fantastic. We still need people who can code. We still need people who can program. That's not going anywhere. Sorry, that's not true. It is changing what's happening. Development is changing. But with Python, for instance, you're not actually telling the computer what to do. You're writing a piece of code which then is interpreted into, a PIC file, which is then interpreted into machine code further down the line. And unless you're writing it in pure machine code, you're not really telling the computer what to do anyway, directly. It's a framework.
And that's a nice and as an interaction. Yeah. So in my journey, I started from different stacks, starting from hardware, including the machine code, like the binary, the assembly, and so on, and going up to these high level languages. And even in hardware design, moving from hardware description languages to high level sentences where you just write software technically that is synthesized into hardware. So this is a nice analogy in the sense of we're moving towards probably a higher rated level still. Yeah. And from that perspective, probably what matters most is critical thinking, agility, flexibility.
Exactly.
Those are probably more and more. They have always been very useful skills. I think now they're getting even more weight.
I was in Ormo Bars for the Founders Labs event a wee while back. I was doing a fireside chat with them. And one of the things that I was really impressed about was they all came with a proof of concept that had probably been written in some by Lovable or either that sort of thing. But that's great, because that means that that's much more than a piece of paper that they can show to somebody who's interested. They actually have a demo. It's not a finished product, and it's not going to do everything they need to do. It's not going to can scale up to 1 million viewers before they get acquired and make their millions. But it's a great start. It starts it off. Exactly. And if we're using the systems for that, that's class. That's a really big step forward, and that's really interesting for us to see. So from a skills perspective, I would hope to see secure AI architecture, data governance and privacy is going nowhere. ISACA do some fantastic courses around data governance and privacy. That is still very, very important. Human factors in security. So, I'm going to make sure that humans are still kind of part of this. And then red teaming AI systems is something that I think is just so cool. Kind of, what can I do? What input can I throw in up here that is going to have an impact down here, and be let loose on those systems. Now I worry that you're just going to break them all. But there it goes.
I sometimes I'm surprised how easy is it to break AI as well. Looking ahead, Simon, uh, what do you think from AI and cybersecurity perspective? What is the thing that is worrying you most? What keeps you up at night?
I think invisible mistakes. So something that fails quietly and nobody notices until it's too late. So you think about the fact that under the hood we're not entirely sure how it all works, or then something goes, it's a wrong decision is made, and suddenly your whole life falls apart, or your death certificate gets issued, or that sort of thing. Those invisible mistakes that are almost impossible to rectify. Again, go back to the hackers thing, and you see your man on the phone, Bunk from The Wire. You see him on the phone, and he's saying, "But I'm not dead." And they say, "Well, how can you prove that?" And he said, "Well, you know." So those can be those mistakes that happen, and things that fail quietly, and you just aren't aware of what's happening. But I think there's also positive things, and I think there's some hopeful stuff as well. We are all collaborating on AI security. These things are being thought about. I think we're a lot further ahead of where we were with cloud or mobile at the same stage. If yes, machine learning's been around for many years. AI, whatever you call AI, is around for a much less amount of time. But I do think we're further ahead of where we were with cloud or mobile at a similar stage.
Absolutely, yeah. It's great to have this at least positive note. And I agree, actually, put it with at least we're probably because of the high impact of AI, and people are kind of trying to think it in a proactive manner. Uh, my last question, Simon, is for organizations. Yeah. Yeah, I think everybody's excited about AI, rightfully so. The opportunities, the scaling, as you mentioned, the acceleration of processes and so on. Did you have any quick kind of hints, do's or don'ts in this process?
For me, it's not about technology. It's not about buy this tool and chuck this in place or anything like that. It's about asking those questions. So if it went wrong tomorrow, if our implementation of whatever AI tool we're building went wrong tomorrow, who would spot it and how quickly? Ask that question. If you're on a board, if you're an exec on a board, ask that question of your team. Ask them, if it went wrong tomorrow, who would spot it and how quickly? And then think about what you would do to act upon that. So audit trails for your AI actions. We used an AI to make this decision. Here is the action that was determined from it. You can automate it. It's grand. But having that audit trail, the robot decided we would do this, something like that. Human oversight for critical decisions. I mentioned earlier about booking flights, or we use that death certificate thing again. Before you make someone dead, actually make sure they are human oversight for critical decisions, and making sure you've got a kill switch as well. So you've got to have that kind of the what's it called on the tube? Is it dead man's handle? Is that what they? Oh, yes, yeah, right, button. You're not a great name for it, but you've got to have that fail safe idea. We work with a fantastic company in Cork, great company down there called Pills, and they're ahead of the game on a lot of really fascinating bits and pieces. But the thing they always come back to is failing to safety, and failing to secure is what they've kind of added on to that over the last few years, which has been incredible to see, because they fail safe, they fail secure. That's good. If you're they do things like they actually build robots that run in car factories and things like that. If that robot suddenly not goes rogue, that'd be a bit silly. But suddenly starts moving incorrectly, and there's a people around, or then it should just shut down. If it doesn't know what to do, it should shut down, as opposed to resetting, because even then it could move the wrong way. So it's about failing safe and failing secure.
Thank you very much, Simon, for your time.
Thank you very much. It's been great to chat with you.
Thank you.